Are you recording? Oh, there we go. All right. Sorry, we'll start again. So I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. If you want actual legal advice, you need to get it from your own lawyer. That's just the way that the law works. Anything I tell you should be, um, you know, hopefully it's useful, hopefully it's accurate, but it should be regarded for entertainment purposes only. This is, of course, no way considered to be advice from my employer either. Unfortunately, that's just the way legal advice works. Um, I will make this disclaimer. I did use get some help from Gemini while I was doing this presentation. However, all of the content in this presentation was created by me. None of the content in this presentation is AI generated. I did validate everything that I discovered with Gemini's help through multiple sources. So our topic today is the use of artificial intelligence by Eclipse committers and contributors. Should let us start by letting everybody know that we do actually have guidelines in this area. There's a URL at the bottom of this page, slash projects, slash handbook, has a Gen AI section in it. You can see that right in the table of contents. It lists a number of considerations. I've highlighted one. I think we all kind of get the rest, kind of need to understand the technology you get, and there's privacy concerns. You need to be mindful of what happens to your inputs. Something we don't have here and probably should is the terms of use of an AI tool may limit what you can do with content. They may, most of the terms that were, well, the terms of use that I have reviewed, which is a many, um, generally say that the output from the AI from the tool is yours, which basically means that you can do what you need to do with it. In some cases, however, the ownership of the output is less clear or not yours. So make sure that you understand the terms of use of whatever tool that you're using. There's also, and I'm not sure if this applies in all cases. There's this interesting bit in OpenAI's terms of use, and again, I have to go back and reacquaint myself because it's been a little while since I looked at it, where they say that um, the output cannot be used to build a competitor for OpenAI. And that's a field of use restriction, which we cannot guarantee in open source. So anyway, that's something that, again, the particular variant of the tools that you are using may have different terms of use. You need to be aware of them, and if you are not sure, send a note to license@eclipse.org, and we will try to help you sort it out. The highlighted bit, many of the tools have a means that you can use to determine reduce the risk that AI-generated content is substantially similar to training data. So th this is kind of a big, this is the big, like the 500-pound gorilla that we're all worried about right now is what happens when copyright is violated and a licensing terms are violated. There are tools to help mitigate against that. And you'll notice that I tend to use the word mitigate a lot. There's no guarantees. Uh, so what I guess I'm asking is make sure that if tools are available to help you identify content that is substantially similar to training data, use those and then make sure you use good judgment with regard to whether or not you should use that content. Again, if you have questions, you're not sure, reach out and we'll try to provide an answer and then use whatever questions you're asking to try to provide better, more thorough guidance in the future. Um, Now, this is nothing to do with AI generated content. As a committer, you have some responsibilities that are independent of whether the content is generated by a human or by a machine. Um, you, as a committer, we expect that you are vetting content that you receive through a pull request or a merge request or some other means of contribution, vetting it for correctness. Contributions that are greater than 1,000 lines of code, there is a process by which the IP team reviews it and vets it. The the vetting process itself may be relatively straightforward, but at least in part, this is a records keeping issue. We want to make sure that when we get contributions that are significant um, from places that maybe we're not entirely comfortable with, that we have a record of that. Um, if the contribution is known or believed to contain any type of encryption, uh, the contributor guidelines that you all agreed to before becoming committers states that you will get appropriate approval from a PMC, from your PMC to do that. Now that's a process. That's something we actually we haven't been enforcing very well, but we're going to have to do a much better job of. But anyway, yeah. So again, the point here is that you have some responsibilities as a committer that exist just anyway, to make sure that the content you're receiving is actually correct and appropriate for the project within scope, is something that the project team can actually maintain moving forward with or without the help of an AI. Um, I would support any project committer, or pardon me, I would support any committer of an Eclipse project rejecting a large contribution because they don't have the bandwidth or the means to review it. I put 10,000 lines of code as a metric here, but if it's 200 lines of code that's just too hard to understand, I would support a committer saying, we're not accepting this pull request. Um, so again, given that I would support a committer rejecting a pull request from a person, Um, I think it's entirely reasonable to reject an AI generated contribution if it's just too complex to review. And as a committer, you cannot, in good faith and good conscience, accept that contribution, understand the nature of that contribution, and include it in your project code base. Um, Yeah, anyway, so there's also, the philosophical question of should you use AI to review a contribution that's generated by AI? These are kind of questions I don't actually have the answer to. Ultimately, we depend on committers making good judgments. Again, when you encounter cases that you don't feel like you're qualified to make a judgment or you're concerned or confused, about what you should do with a contribution, reach out to EMO at eclipse-foundation.org and we'll do our best to help you. Um, some other things to think about. Your employer may have an opinion about whether or not you should be using AI tools to generate content or accepting content that's generated by an AI. This is really between you and your employer to sort out. The Eclipse Foundation really doesn't have a stake in this. Well, that's not true. We don't have a say in this. Um, if you need assistance, if you have questions, again, reach out. We'll do our best to help you if we can. It's worth noting that there's an awful lot of unsettled law around here, and court cases could be decided that will change the advice that we give. We're all just doing our best at this point. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the terms of use of a particular tool may put limitations on what you can do with the output and may have something to say about who owns the output. Please make sure you take a few minutes to understand the terms of use of the tools that you are using. Um, the the fun thing about law is that it varies by jurisdiction, and the the best that we can do is to try and generalize what the community, the various communities are doing. General consensus is that content generated by an AI cannot be copyrighted. Um, most jurisdictions, and this is where it gets fun because not all, but in most of the jurisdictions that we work in, content that is generated by a human can be copyrighted. Did I hear somebody trying to jump in with a question? Okay. Um, so general consensus amongst the community, amongst the legal folks that we have access to, is that content generated by an AI cannot be copyrighted, and therefore is generally considered to be in the public domain. Um, our challenges, of course, again, I mentioned this earlier, we need to be mindful that exact copies of training data could be problematic from a copyright point of view. Something to keep in mind, even if content is not exactly the same, if it is substantially similar, that could also be a copyright infringement problem. Um, if, as a developer, if I show you an implementation of something that I have built, and then you go away and make a duplicate of it, and in the process of making that duplicate, you basically make a something that is very or substantially similar to what I created, perhaps different only by, a couple of variable names or maybe a comment here and there, that could well be a copyright infringement. Just bear that in mind. Again, I'm a little concerned that whenever I talk about this, I just scare the heck out of everybody. Um, so just again, just bear that in mind that if you see something, generally, if there is a risk that something you generate could be substantially similar enough to training data to potentially be a copyright infringement. Now, um, I've already talked a little bit about this, but I'll talk a little bit more. Like I said, AI generated content is likely not copyrightable or licensable. The consensus within the community, the consensus that I've observed is indicating that it is CC 0, Creative Commons 0 license. And I've shown the SPDX code there because we like those things. Human modifications and curations are copyrightable. So if you use an AI to generate some content and then change it, your changes are your copyright. That doesn't change the generated content's state. That generated content is still not really copyrightable material, but your changes are. Curation is also considered a copyrightable act. So if you took a bunch of AI generated images, those images are not copyrightable. If you put them into a lovely coffee table book and decided what order those pictures go in, and then publish your book, your curation of those images and the act of putting them into a book is actually a copyrightable act. So likewise, taking content that has been AI generated and adding it into your project in a particular way, that act could be copyrightable. And we hang a little bit off of that notion. Your prompts to an AI could be copyrightable. And I'm going to talk a little bit about prompts. Now, bear in mind that I do understand that we very rarely will generate something with an AI with a single prompt, and it's usually a discussion, a little bit of back and forth. I believe the cool kids are referring to it as vibe computing now, or vibe programming. Um, anyway, again, the point here is, we want to try, there are different copyrightable acts involved in the use of AI generated content. Um, and again, I just want to restate that changing AI generated content does not make the original content your content. You can't assume copyright of it. That doesn't change the state. And this is true of any contribution. If I make a contribution to a project and then you change it, we both share that code. We both, I own the content that I created, you own the content that you added on top of it. Um, Copyright and license headers. What do we do? Now, um, the pragmatic solution that, again, we seem to be seeing is that Developers are expected to review and document AI-generated sections of their content and claim co-ownership by virtue of the verification and adaptation, right? So again, the actual verification, the actual curation of the content, that is itself a copyrightable act. Include an AI disclosure. In an AI disclosure, identify the tools that are used, summarize what you use the tool to do, indicate that the work has been verified by you, and to the extent possible, summarize the prompt and other relevant information that was used to generate that content. So here's a suggestion of what a header might look like. Um, I've got content generated by an AI in this, but I'm claiming the copyright is mine. Stating that the project's license is this, the license of the overall content, the license of my copyrighted material is this, but that this file contains content that was generated by an AI that is most likely considered to be under public domain. Right. So the idea here is anybody that consumes this content knows that an AI was involved in its generation, and I've specified a license identifier of EPL and CC 0. In most jurisdictions, this could actually collapse down to, sorry, in many, in some jurisdictions, this could collapse down to EPL 2.0, but we tend to try and be as explicit as possible with our SPDX expressions. So this is one of those talks where if I'm talking to you in public and I can see your faces, all of your faces would be really scrunchy right now, thinking, oh my gosh, I need to put disclaimers on every little bit of AI use. Not so much. Minor things, using autocomplete, generating getters and setters for a Java program, boilerplate content. If you ask, I asked I think it was ChatGPT to build an Eclipse plugin for me, and it just kind of here's all the scaffolding you need for an Eclipse plugin. Okay, great. And I just start building from there. I don't really need to, nobody really cares about that. Wrote content is probably a little bit fuzzier. If I was to ask you to do something, if I was to ask five programmers to do something and all five programmers did exactly the same thing, right? There's just one way to get that job done. That would be there's a rote means of doing it. This is just how it's done. Probably in the category of nobody cares, right? So you don't need to be annotating every single minor every time you add a for loop, every time Copilot adds a for loop to your program, you know, just move on. Nobody cares. Um, when the contribution becomes more significant, when we're talking about an entire file being generated, um, if we are generating many multiple lines of content, um, then this is where it gets hard. If there is a creative spark in there, right? That term comes up a lot. If you look at this, if you look at some content, you think this is darned clever, right? Chances are you need to be out, you're going to need to indicate that that was generated by an AI. Um, so again, we depend on committers making informed decisions. And I know that this puts a lot of onus on you, and I know this is hard. And again, I'm hopeful that as you encounter situations and you ask us questions, we will be able to provide better, more robust, more thorough advice on how to deal with more specific cases. There is this notion in law called de minimis, which I love. Basically, the law does not concern itself with trifling matters. Nobody cares if you fix a spelling mistake, right? From an intellectual property point of view, from a licensing and copyright point of view, if you fix a spelling mistake in somebody's content, great, that's wonderful. We don't, or if an AI fixes that, we don't need to tell the world that an AI fixed it. It's just a spelling mistake, right? So very simple things, just have at it. When you're not sure, if you start to think, gosh, that's clever, then that's maybe when we need to start thinking about AI disclosures. Consider adding a README to directories that contain several files of AI-generated content. Just a README that describes, provides a common AI disclosure, summary of how we got here, that sort of thing. Um, Consider adding a section to your contributing file in your repository that describes the project's opinion regarding contributions that use AI and special processes the project cares about. Again, if you're not sure what that should be, let's connect and we'll try to come up with some good examples of how to do that. But but again, it's really just a matter of if there's something significant in the content generated by AI, we have a responsibility to our downstream to make sure that they understand that. They know that. Um, when it comes to agentic coding, having some agent go off and following vague instructions, create a whole bunch of content and then create a pull request and then blah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to get back to you on this one. As this starts to expand, as agents start generating more and more content based on you know rough instructions, um, it's not clear to me where the copyrightable acts are in that. And again, I don't know. We're just gonna have to get back to you. Um, just again, a reminder. Nothing in here should be considered legal advice. This picture I find really fascinating. This is kind of case law that is has been used to talk about copyright in AI. This picture is of a monkey that was actually taken by the monkey themselves. A photographer set a camera up in the forest with a touch plate, and a monkey stood on the touch plate and basically started taking many, many multiple pictures of themselves. And they're gold. Like these pictures are great. The photographer then tried to sell the pictures, and people just started using them. And he wound up spending time in court. And at the end of the day, the court decided that the monkey themselves was the one that took the pictures. And since the monkey is not a human, the pictures are actually public domain, and the author could not claim ownership of them. The photographer, pardon me, could not claim ownership of them. Anyway, fascinating story. If you want to look it up, it's monkey copyright would probably be enough of a search criteria to find it. Um, so that's the oh, so that's kind of the advice that I have to give right now. Again, as you are using AI, when you hit corner cases, if you could just reach out, we're trying to help work through them. I'm hopeful that you don't all do it tomorrow. But we try to provide more robust advice with examples would be good. But I'm hopeful that what I've given you is enough to start. I'll just pause for questions.
There are some comments in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let me pull up the chat. Why am I not seeing the chat? Oh my goodness. There we are, right at the top. Oh my goodness. Okay. Um, is there any plan for having a tool similar to the automatic IP vetting tool to check such similarity automatically? Currently, we have no plans. In the past, we have used some fingerprinting software to identify content, whether or not content has been copied. At the scale we're talking, it's a little bit hard, but right now we have no such plans for that. We're hoping that committers are using the tools that are available to them already through the tools. But if this becomes a problem, that's something we will explore. Uh, okay, comment about, I'm not sure how to respond to that. I'm going to just keep going. Yeah, I think your problem of very similar is already a problem. Absolutely true. Already a problem today. I know that every first year computer science student violates patents. Every first year computer science student violates copyright, just by virtue of doing their assignments. Um, there's a lot of content out there. A lot of it is about intention, though, right? If you actually copy somebody's content, that's different than if you um, inadvertently write content that is similar to what somebody else has written. It may not, it may, the distinction may be narrow, but it's still better, right? A lot of it is about intention when it comes to such legal things. But yeah, again, this is not really it. You're right, though. I think the observation that Christoph is making is that this is not a new problem. This is an existing problem that's just amplified. Yeah, so again, copyright, like snippets from Stack Overflow, right? When you're copying content, that's just the way to do it. A couple of lines, like everybody, a for loop is just a for loop. Um, there's a lot of stuff that's like don't sweat the little things, I think is the advice, right? It's the big things that we need to worry about. Again, anytime you use the word clever, um, one of the things I meant to say that I didn't is if you're just not sure and there's a significant amount of content, just slap an AI disclosure on it. Like if it's not onerous, do it. If it's onerous because it's all like little bits and pieces all over the place, then probably you don't need an AI disclosure. They're probably just little bits and pieces that nobody cares about. Any particular AI tools that the EF discourages using because of licensing concerns and vagueness? Oh, my turn to be vague. No, at this point, I don't have any. I haven't really done a complete survey of all of the tools. We have looked at Copilot and Gemini and ChatGPT, kind of the big ones. Um, if there are specific tools that you are curious about, again, let me know and we'll have a look through the terms of use and see if we can find any gotchas.
I think Claude is what I'm wondering about.
Yeah, I keep hearing about Claude and I have not had a chance to look at it. So I'll add that to the list. Maybe an extension of the previous question, field of use restrictions. Can an OSS project be held liable for violating if used by a third party? Yeah, see, do you recommend just rejecting contributions produced by tools that have a field of use restriction? Well, so yeah. Um, if we cannot make any guarantee that our open source content will not be used in any particular way. Like the open source definition, I want to say five, maybe it's six, no restrictions on field of use, right? So yeah, if content that gets generated by an AI has a field of use restriction in it, then that we just can't use it. Now, can we be held liable? Now, that's a really interesting question, and I'm really not prepared to talk about that today, but we will make that a topic. What does liable mean? Like what's the worst that can happen? The short version is it's usually the adopters of software that get sued. But again, that's a much larger discussion that again I think I'm going to defer until the new year. Okay, I'm going to wrap up today with just something. I'm curious to see your reactions. So if you can like kind of use the features within Zoom to express your emotional state as I talk about this, that would be wonderful. We have been presented with an interesting offer from our friends at Microsoft. They are offering that all of our committers will get access to GitHub Copilot Enterprise to use as they choose, right? So this is not, it's not the idea is if you are an Eclipse committer, you would get the ability to use this tool in anything you do. It's not restricted to use within the open source project. Um, it would it will exist as long as you hold committer status. As soon as you lose committer status, you will lose this access. Is licensed to the individual. Again, can be used in any context. Um, no cost to us or to you. The Eclipse Foundation has to do a little bit of work. We've actually done most of the legwork. It's a little bit of technical work to set this up. We cannot guarantee that Microsoft will not change its mind. At this point, I don't recall what the term is, but again, they probably will reconsider every year. If access is revoked, it's gone. We have no means to pay for it, for example, if Microsoft decides that they're not going to provide it for free anymore. So anyway, this is just, again, this is something, again, I wanted to gauge interest by presenting this. The, no. So we are providing an access control model. This will manifest, at this point, it will manifest as a GitHub organization of which all committers will be a member of a team. So as long as you are an Eclipse committer, you will be a member of that team and have access to the GitHub Copilot Enterprise features. This means that you will, once we set this up, you will receive a notification from GitHub that you've been added to a team. You'll have to accept it. Before we do any of this, we will send a note out to all of the committers to just warn everybody that this is coming so you will understand why you're receiving that message from GitHub. And again, will persist as long as you are in good standing as a committer, and details to follow. So, does anybody want to scream at me that this is a terrible idea? Please, you can reach
I,
out now, or you can reach out through, go to the EMO inbox.
I'll ask a question now. In
Yep.
terms of good standing, most of the projects have a fairly lenient retiring policy of
Yep.
holding to committers. If they put their hand up and say, hold on to us even if they're not contributing, is there any pressure or change because of this to act
So,
differently?
so that's an interesting question, and honestly, I've been thinking an awful lot about, people who've been inactive committers for 5 years and just sort of generally cleaning up our committer status. One of the reasons why we've been made this offer is we have been identified as a project as a organization that carefully manages this and actually cares about this about people being in good standing. Um, yeah, so probably we will be spending a little bit more time to make sure that our committers are actually continuing to be committers in good faith and really leaning, I was going to say leaning on, but working with our project leads to make sure that their committer lists are um, correct, right? So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be careful. We're going to be nice about it. But yeah, but we do, and this is something we've been thinking about anyway. It's not a reaction to this offer. Yeah, it's important to us as an organization. It's important to our community that we have integrity in all of our things, and one of them is whether or not committers are committers in good standing. Yeah. Which leads to the other question is, or leads to a completely unrelated topic. Um, Committer elections should follow the follow building some reputation. We have had a rash of committer elections where an organization has hired somebody new or has decided that somebody should be a committer, and they start an election and say this person is going to do wonderful things, make them a committer. Um, no. Uh, our system is based on our open source rules of engagement, which are designed to enforce a culture of vendor neutrality. So in order to get committer status, one should develop reputation within the project, and reputation is developed by public contribution. So this would be making pull requests. This would be active engagement in uh, discussions, active engagement on issues, basically working in the project, demonstrating to the world that the individual um, is understands the role that they are going to assume when they become a committer. Again, kind of joking that it's not related to the previous topic, but it is. We expect that there will be some gaming, and we're not changing our posture on this, right? Committer elections follow development of reputation within the project.